The monastery courtyard was silent, save for the gentle rustling of leaves in the evening breeze. The air carried a crispness that signaled the coming of night, and the distant hum of insects barely pierced the stillness. I sat cross-legged on the worn stone floor, my eyes closed, my breath steady, just as I had done every evening for the past 20 years. A single candle flickered before me, its weak light barely illuminating the dimly lit chamber where I had spent my life in pursuit of enlightenment, discipline, mindfulness, detachment from suffering. These had been my guiding principles since the moment I took my vows. Each day unfolded in the same measured rhythm, rising before dawn, purifying the mind through meditation, committing myself to the teachings of karma, and embracing the ceaseless cycle of birth and rebirth. I believed my path was certain, my purpose clear. For as long as I could remember, I had been devoted to the idea that every action carried weight, that every thought shaped the future, and that in death, my soul would continue its journey. Reincarnation was inevitable, a cosmic law I never questioned. I had taught these principles to others, guiding them to free themselves from earthly desires, urging them to see suffering as an illusion. Yet that night, something was different. A strange sensation settled over me, a heaviness pressing against my chest, foreign and unwelcome. At first, I dismissed it as fatigue, another test of my discipline. I willed my mind to stillness, but the feeling deepened, tightening its grip. My fingers tingled, my breaths grew shallow. A sudden sharp pain erupted in my chest, radiating outward like fire burning beneath my ribs. I tried to steady my breath, but my vision blurred, my head swayed, and an icy chill swept through my body. I had trained for years to master detachment, to accept the impermanence of the body, but in that moment all I felt was fear. I reached out, my hand trembling in the candlelight, seeking something, anything, to ground me. But there was nothing. The walls of the monastery blurred, the candle's flame wavered and distorted, and then, suddenly, everything collapsed into silence. Darkness. I was no longer in my body. That much I knew instantly. But something was wrong. I was not moving toward the next life. There was no tunnel, no guiding spirits, no peaceful transition. There was only a vast, endless void. I tried to move, but there was no body to command. I tried to speak, but there was no voice. I was fully conscious, yet I had no form. A deep panic surged within me, unlike anything I had ever known. My entire existence had been built upon certainty, the certainty of karma, of rebirth, of a spiritual path that promised release from suffering. Yet here, in this emptiness, none of it mattered. The silence pressed in, suffocating. And then, from somewhere unseen, the whispers began. The silence was unbearable. It was not the absence of sound, but something deeper, something alive. I was floating, weightless, in a vast darkness that stretched beyond comprehension. There was no ground beneath me, no sky above, no horizon to mark direction. I was nowhere and yet fully aware. I had expected peace in death. I had spent my life preparing for this moment, believing that I had freed myself from earthly concerns. I had taught others that the self was an illusion, that fear was a product of attachment, that karma would guide my soul forward. But here, in this abyss, nothing made sense. Then, the whispers began. At first, they were faint, like distant echoes carried by a wind that did not exist. Soft murmurs, overlapping voices, speaking in tongues I did not recognize. But as they grew closer, they became clearer. They were speaking to me. You were deceived. You wasted your life. You do not belong here. My mind, trained for years to find stillness, began to unravel. I tried to push the words away, to silence them with the discipline I had mastered. But they did not stop. You thought you knew the truth, but you were blind. You led others into the same deception. I wanted to argue, to deny their accusations, but the words struck something deep within me. A dread settled over me as I realized I had no control here, no mantra, no meditation could protect me. A presence stirred in the darkness. I could not see it, but I could feel it. A vast, unseen force beneath me. Watching, waiting. A hunger unlike anything I had known. The whispers turned to screams. You ignored the truth. You closed your eyes to him. A force latched onto me, an invisible grip pulling me downward. It was subtle at first, a gentle tug, but quickly grew stronger. I had no limbs to resist, no body to struggle, yet I felt myself being dragged deeper into something vast and inescapable. I had never believed in judgment. I had never believed in anything beyond karma. And yet, as I was being pulled into the depths of this abyss, I knew I was not meant to be here. The realization shook me. Had everything I believed been a lie? Had I spent my life chasing an illusion? The fear I had spent years training myself to overcome was now all-consuming. And then suddenly, a blinding light erupted into existence. The darkness recoiled instantly, and for the first time since I had left my body, I felt something I had not known was missing. Peace. If this testimony is touching your heart, I invite you to be part of this community. Take a moment and click the like button. It helps spread this message to others who need to hear it. And if you want to receive a blessing today, comment Amen below. Let us know which city you're watching from, so we can send you even more prayers of love and protection. The darkness recoiled, writhing as if in agony. The presence that had been pulling me downward released its grip instantly, retreating from the overwhelming brilliance that now surrounded me. It was not like any light I had ever seen before. It did not merely illuminate. It consumed, filled, and radiated something beyond warmth, beyond vision. It was alive. It was powerful. It was holy. For the first time since leaving my body, I felt something other than terror. The crushing weight of despair, the whispers of condemnation. All of it faded into nothing in the presence of this light. And then, from within it, a figure emerged. At first, my mind tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Was this an enlightened being? A guide to my next life? Was it the Buddha himself coming to lead me into my rebirth? My thoughts scrambled, searching for an explanation that fit within what I had spent my life believing. But the moment I looked into his eyes, everything I thought I knew collapsed. This was no mere teacher, no enlightened master, no distant, impersonal force of wisdom. It was a man unlike any I had ever seen. His face radiated a purity beyond comprehension, his presence more powerful than anything I had ever encountered. His eyes, piercing yet filled with unimaginable love, met mine, and in that instant, I knew. It was Jesus. I recoiled, as if the very recognition of him was too much to bear. This could not be real. I had spent my entire life dismissing Jesus as just another historical figure, perhaps a wise teacher, perhaps even an enlightened soul, but nothing more. He was not supposed to be here, and yet as he stood before me, I knew without a shred of doubt that he was more than I had ever imagined. I fell to my knees, though I had no body to kneel with. My entire being was overwhelmed, unraveling under the sheer weight of his presence. I had encountered monks, teachers, and scholars who carried peace within them, but Jesus, he did not merely carry peace. He was peace. And in his gaze, I saw everything. Every moment of my life was laid bare before him. Every thought I had ever had, every belief I had clung to, every action, every mistake, every teaching I had passed on to others. It was all there, exposed in an instant. I had spent my life searching for enlightenment, disciplining my mind, detaching from earthly concerns. But as I knelt before Jesus, I saw with perfect clarity I had never known the truth. A deep sorrow filled me. Not because he condemned me, he didn't, but because I finally saw myself for what I truly was. I had been blind. I had spent years seeking wisdom, yet I had ignored the very source of wisdom itself. I had trained myself to let go of desires, yet I had clung desperately to my own beliefs. unwilling to consider that I could be wrong. I had believed that all paths led to the same place, that truth was fluid, that we created our own realities through our actions. But standing before Jesus, I knew there was only one truth, and he was it. Tears welled in my eyes, though I had no physical form to cry with. The weight of it all was too much to bear. I wanted to speak, to ask, to plead for understanding, but no words came. Then Jesus finally spoke. His voice was unlike anything I had ever heard. It was not just sound, it was power. His words did not merely enter my ears, they entered my soul. "You have sought truth your entire life," he said, his voice filled with sorrow and love. "But you did not find it, because you were searching in the wrong place." The words pierced me. I knew they were true. You believed that karma would balance your soul. You believed that through discipline you could reach enlightenment. But no discipline, no action, no meditation can remove the weight of sin. Sin. That word had never meant much to me before. In Buddhism, sin was not seen as a moral failure, but as ignorance, something to be overcome through better actions in the next life. But as Jesus spoke, I felt the reality of sin, not as a mere mistake, but as a deep, unbridgeable separation between humanity and God. I trembled. I had spent my life trying to erase the self, trying to detach from identity, believing that my essence would eventually merge into the greater whole. But now, standing before Jesus, I realized something I had never understood before. I was created to be known by God. I was not meant to dissolve into nothingness. I was not meant to reincarnate endlessly, trying to fix past mistakes. I was meant to be His. Jesus stepped closer. His presence did not shrink me, it completed me. And in that moment, I understood something else. The emptiness I had always felt, the quiet longing that had never gone away, was because I had been searching for Him all along. I had tried to find salvation through my own efforts. I had believed that through discipline, meditation, and good deeds, I could earn enlightenment. But the truth was in front of me now. No human effort could ever bridge the gap between man and God. Only Jesus could do that. My heart was breaking. How could I have been so blind? How could I have rejected the very one who had created me, loved me, and died for me? I lowered my head, unable to meet His gaze. "Lord," I whispered. The word escaped before I could stop it, and it felt right. I had never called anyone Lord before, but I knew, beyond any doubt, that He was my Lord. Jesus knelt beside me, His presence filling every part of my being. He did not need to explain further. The truth was already inside me now. "You were never meant to walk this path alone," He said gently. "I have been calling you all along." I could not hold back my tears. "I didn't know," I admitted. "I thought I was on the right path." Jesus placed a hand on my shoulder, and in that touch, I felt a love deeper than anything I had ever known. "Come," He said, "let me show you what you never understood." If this testimony is speaking to you, I want to invite you to be part of this community. Take a moment and subscribe to this channel. It helps us spread these powerful stories of faith and transformation. And if this message touched your heart, leave a like so that more people can experience this truth. We are all walking this journey together, and you are never alone. The moment Jesus touched me, my entire being trembled. It was not fear that coursed through me, nor was it pain. It was something deeper, something I had never known before. It was love. Not the kind of love I had studied, the detached compassion I had been taught to cultivate. This was something different. This love saw me, truly saw me. It knew me completely. Every flaw, every failure, every misguided belief I had held on to so desperately. And yet, it did not turn away. Jesus did not look at me with disappointment. He did not condemn me. He loved me. "Come," He said again, His voice steady, filled with patience. "Let me show you what you never understood." At once, the light around us began to shift. Suddenly, I was no longer floating in the vast emptiness. A vision unfolded before me. I saw my life, not as I had remembered it, but as it truly was. The years I had spent in the monastery, the countless hours in meditation, the teachings I had shared with others. I had always believed I was walking the path to enlightenment, guiding others toward truth. But now, from where I stood, I saw something I had never noticed before. There was no peace in the eyes of those I had taught. They were searching, always searching, just like I had been, just like I still was, until now. One by one I saw them, students, monks, travelers who had come seeking wisdom. I saw their endless devotion, their relentless pursuit of something greater. They chanted, meditated, disciplined their minds and bodies. Yet, in their deepest moments of silence, they were empty. They were never free. And neither had I been. Tears welled in my eyes as I realized the truth. I taught them lies, I whispered. I told them that peace was within themselves, that if they worked hard enough they would find it. But they never did. None of us ever did. Jesus said nothing. He simply let me see. I watched as people devoted their entire lives to the pursuit of karma, believing their actions could save them. They spent years trying to outweigh their wrongs with good deeds, hoping that they could earn another chance, one more life, one more opportunity. But there was no peace in it, only exhaustion. They were deceived, I murmured, my voice trembling. I was deceived. And then, the vision changed. I saw something even more terrifying. I saw souls, countless souls, standing before something immense, something beyond words, the presence of God. Some fell to their knees in worship, their faces filled with overwhelming joy, their burdens lifted. They were free. But others trembled, they pleaded, they begged. I was a good person, they cried. I did my best. I followed the teachings. I sought enlightenment. But the weight of their deeds was still upon them. They were still unclean. They had lived believing karma would save them, that their efforts would be enough. But they had never known Jesus. And without him, there was no salvation. I could not breathe. I told them the wrong path, I whispered, falling to my knees. I told them to save themselves, but they never could. My whole life I had thought that if I just did enough, I would be saved. That if I disciplined myself, if I let go of attachments, if I denied the desires of the flesh, I would reach peace. But there was no peace without Jesus. No amount of meditation could erase my sins. No level of enlightenment could make me worthy. I turned to Jesus, my vision blurred by tears. What must I do? Jesus knelt beside me, his presence overwhelming, yet filled with unimaginable love. You were never meant to carry this burden alone, he said. You were never meant to find your own way. That is why I came. That is why I died for you. My heart shattered. I had spent my whole life striving for something that had been freely offered to me all along. Jesus had already paid the price. Salvation was not something I had to earn. It was a gift. If this testimony is speaking to you, I invite you to take a step of faith with us. Click like to show that you receive this message with an open heart, and comment Amen below to claim your blessing today. Let us know where you are watching from, so we can lift your name in our prayers. You are never alone. I could barely lift my head. The weight of what I had just seen pressed down on me like a crushing force, an unbearable realization that shook me to my core. For so many years I had thought I understood the universe, the balance of karma, the endless cycle of rebirth. I had lived with certainty, with discipline, believing that my actions could lead me to truth. But now, standing before Jesus, I saw how wrong I had been. I had not been walking toward enlightenment. I had been walking in circles, chasing an illusion. And now Jesus had shown me the truth. Salvation could never be earned. It could only be received. I trembled, my entire being unraveling in the presence of this overwhelming love. What must I do? I whispered again, though deep down I already knew the answer. Jesus looked at me, his gaze filled with mercy, with understanding, with a love so deep it reached the very core of my soul. "Follow me," he said. A choice. It was so simple, and yet, it was everything. I had spent my entire existence training my mind to be free from attachment, to let go of self, to dissolve into nothingness, believing that in doing so, I would find peace. But now, for the first time in my life, I understood what true peace was. It was not found in emptiness. It was not found in discipline. It was found in Him. 1,000 thoughts flooded my mind. What about the life I'd left behind? What about the teachings I'd spent years spreading? What about the people who still believed as I once did? My students, my fellow monks, my friends, they did not know. They were still searching, still striving, still clinging to a path that would never lead them where they longed to go. I turned my eyes back to Jesus, my heart pounding. "But what about them?" I asked. "They don't know. They believe what I believed. What will happen to them?" Jesus' expression did not change. There was no anger, no frustration, only an unshakable, eternal truth in his eyes. "That is why you must return." The words hit me like a wave. Return? Go back? After seeing this? After standing before the King of Kings, after experiencing this indescribable presence, after knowing the truth, could I truly go back? Could I return to a world where people would reject me, mock me, cast me out for what I now knew? I had spent my life among people who would never believe this. They would call me deceived. They would say my mind had been clouded. They would turn away from me, just as I had once turned away from anyone who had tried to tell me about Jesus. The thought of it terrified me. I looked up at Jesus, searching his face for another answer, another path. But there was none. There was only one truth. "If I go back, they will reject me," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Yes," Jesus said, "they will call me a liar. Yes, they will cast me out. Yes." I swallowed hard. The weight of this decision was heavier than anything I had ever carried. But then, Jesus did something unexpected. He smiled, a soft, knowing smile, a smile that carried hope. "But some will listen," he said. "Some are already searching, some are already asking, and when you speak, their hearts will recognize the truth." I felt something shift inside me. Yes, I would be rejected. Yes, I would lose everything. Yes, the life I had once known would never welcome me again. But even if just one person heard me, even if just one life was saved, it would be worth it. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I will go back." Jesus nodded. There was no disappointment in his eyes, no sadness, only love. "Then go," he said, "and do not be afraid, for I am with you." And in an instant everything changed. The light began to fade. The warmth of his presence started to pull away. I felt myself being drawn backward faster and faster, as if I was being pulled through time and space itself. The last thing I saw was Jesus, his eyes filled with love. Then, agony. A pain so unbearable I thought my body would tear apart. A deep, burning pressure in my chest. A gasp. My lungs filled with air, my chest heaved violently. I felt again, pain, exhaustion, the weight of flesh pulling me down. The world around me was chaos, shouting voices, machines beeping, hands gripping my body. I was back. I was alive, and everything had changed. If you believe this testimony is touching lives, I want to invite you to be part of this journey with us. Click subscribe and join this community of faith and truth. And if you feel this message in your heart, leave a like. It helps this story reach more people. You are never alone. I gasped, my chest rising and falling in desperate, ragged breaths. My lungs burned as if they had been empty for hours, struggling to pull air into a body that felt foreign and weak. Every muscle ached, every nerve screamed, and the weight of my own flesh pressed down on me like an unbearable burden. I was alive. The room around me was chaos. Doctors, nurses, and monks crowded over me, their eyes wide with shock. The steady beep of a heart monitor echoed through the sterile air, the harsh fluorescent lights blinding after the radiance I had just seen. For a long moment, no one spoke. I saw their faces, some filled with relief, others frozen in disbelief. A young doctor reached for my wrist, checking my pulse as if confirming the impossible. His hand trembled. "We thought we lost you," one of the monks whispered. I tried to respond, but my throat was raw. My voice caught somewhere between the place I had left and the body I had returned to. Then suddenly memories rushed back. Jesus, the light, the truth, the choice. It all came flooding in at once, overwhelming me, shaking me to my core. I had died. I had stood before Jesus Christ, and now I was back. Not for myself, but for them. I forced my body upright, my movements sluggish and heavy, like trying to wade through deep water. I needed to tell them now. "I saw him," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "I saw Jesus." A sharp silence fell over the room. I saw the monks exchange uneasy glances. The doctors stiffened. The young disciple who had been at my side for years took a hesitant step forward. "Master," he said gently, "your mind has been through a great ordeal. You should rest." I shook my head. "No. You don't understand," I insisted, my voice gaining strength. "I left my body. I was in darkness. And then the light came. He came. Jesus. He is real." The reactions were immediate. Some of the monks averted their eyes. Others looked at me with thinly veiled concern, as if I had gone mad. One of the elder monks stepped forward, his face solemn. "You are confused," he said, his tone cautious. "Death can bring visions, illusions. The mind plays tricks. You must not let it deceive you." I wanted to scream. "It was not a vision," I said firmly. "It was real. I stood before him. I spoke with him." I turned to my mentor, the man who had guided me for years, the one I had trusted most. His expression was unreadable, but I could see it in his eyes. He was afraid. "You have always taught me to seek truth," I said, my voice steady. "To question, to look beyond illusion. And yet, when truth is given to me, you want me to ignore it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked out of the room. The silence that followed was suffocating. One by one, the others followed him until only a few remained. I had seen their faces before they left. Doubt, discomfort, and for some, anger. I was no longer one of them. I had come back to tell them the truth, and they had rejected it. I felt my heart sink. But then, another thought came. Not all of them left. A handful of monks remained in the doorway, hesitant, uncertain. Their eyes were filled with something different. Not anger, not rejection, but curiosity. And that was enough. I had made my choice. I would speak. I would tell them. And no matter what happened next, I would not be silent. The days that followed were filled with whispers. Everywhere I went within the monastery, eyes followed me. Conversations fell silent when I entered a room. Students who had once sought my guidance now avoided me. I had become something other, something they did not understand, and did not want to. At first, I tried to speak with them privately. I approached my closest friends, the monks I had trained alongside for years. I tried to explain, to tell them what I had seen, but each attempt ended the same way. "You are confused. You have been through a great trauma. This is a test of the mind. You must meditate until it passes." I wanted to shake them, to plead with them, but I had once been just like them. I had once dismissed the idea of Jesus as nothing more than another teacher, another enlightened soul among many. I had closed my heart to him just as they were closing their hearts to me now. And yet, I could not stop. I could not stay silent. I had died. I had stood before Jesus Christ. I had been given a second chance. How could I not share this? I tried again. I sat with my students, the young monks who had once hung on my every word. "You know me," I told them. "You have learned from me for years. Have I ever lied to you?" They shook their heads. "Then listen to me now. I was wrong. Everything I believed about karma, about enlightenment, about the cycle of rebirth, it was all a deception. I have seen the truth, and the truth is Jesus." The moment I spoke his name, one of them flinched. Another clenched his jaw. "Master," one of them said carefully, "we respect you, but you are speaking of a foreign God." "He is not foreign," I said desperately. "He is the only way. He is the truth." Another student, one I had trained for years, stood up abruptly. "You have been deceived," he said. The others followed him, leaving me alone. I exhaled shakily. It was happening. I was losing everything. Days turned into weeks, and the distance between me and my old life only grew. It was no longer just whispers. Now, it was warnings. The elders of the monastery called me to them. "You must stop this," one said. "You are confusing the younger students. You are bringing shame to this temple," another added. "If you continue, you will have no place here." I looked into their faces, these men who had been my teachers, my mentors. I had once admired them, trusted them, but now they were blind, just as I had been. "I cannot stop," I said simply. A heavy silence fell over the room. The head monk, the one who had first welcomed me into this life so many years ago, finally spoke. "Then you must leave." The words hit me like a blow. Leave? Leave the only home I had ever known? Leave the life I had spent decades building? For a single agonizing moment, doubt clawed at my mind. Could I walk away from everything? Was I making a mistake? Then, as quickly as it came, the doubt vanished. I had seen the truth. I had stood before Jesus, and no matter the cost, I would not turn away from him. I bowed my head. "Then I will go." I was cast out before the sun had set. I was given no time to gather my belongings, no final words from the monks I had called brothers. The doors of the monastery closed behind me, and just like that, I was alone. The night air was colder than I remembered. Or maybe it was the absence of the life I had known that made it feel that way. The monastery, my home for decades, was now behind me, its towering walls standing silent in the moonlight. I had entered through those gates as a young man, full of conviction, certain of the path I was meant to walk. Now, I was leaving with nothing but the truth burning inside me. I had no money, no possessions beyond the robes on my back. I had no destination, no plan. Only one certainty remained. I could not be silent. Jesus had sent me back for a reason, but where would I go? Who would listen? I walked for hours through the empty roads leading away from the monastery, my feet aching with each step. My mind raced, replaying everything that had happened. What would my family say? Would they reject me too? What about the monks who had hesitated before leaving the room? Had I planted a seed of doubt in their hearts? Or had they already dismissed me? The truth was, I no longer had a place in the world I had known. And yet, I had to speak. As dawn broke, I found myself in a small village, my body weak with exhaustion. The scent of burning wood filled the air as early morning fires were lit. Vendors arranged their carts. Children ran barefoot through the streets. Life continued, as if the world had not just shifted beneath my feet. I sat near the entrance of the marketplace, my stomach twisting with hunger. I had nothing to offer. No food, no shelter, no reputation. Only the truth. Would anyone listen? A woman passed by, glancing at me with curiosity, then another. An old man paused, watching me for a moment before moving on. I took a deep breath. It was time. "Do you know of Jesus?" I asked the next person who passed. The man barely slowed his pace. I tried again. "Have you ever heard his name?" A woman paused, her brow furrowing. "Jesus?" she repeated. I nodded eagerly. "Yes, he is the Son of God. He is the way, the truth, and the life." Her expression darkened. "That is a Western religion," she said dismissively, turning away. My heart clenched, but I refused to be discouraged. This was only the beginning. I spent the rest of the day speaking to anyone who would listen. Most ignored me. Some scoffed. A few listened, their faces uncertain, their eyes searching. By nightfall, I had found a small place to sleep near the edge of the village. My body was exhausted, my voice raw. But my soul was on fire. I had lost everything, but I had found everything, and I was just getting started. Days turned into weeks, and I wandered from village to village, speaking wherever I could. I was no longer a respected monk, no longer a teacher surrounded by devoted students. I was an outcast, a man without a home. And yet I carried something more valuable than anything I had ever possessed: the truth of Jesus Christ. At first, almost no one listened. I stood in the marketplaces, at the edges of temples, near wells where women gathered in the early morning to fetch water. I spoke of what I had seen, what I had learned. Most people passed me without a glance. Some stopped long enough to frown, to shake their heads, to dismiss me as another wanderer with strange ideas. Reincarnation is the truth, they would say. Karma decides our fate. Jesus is a god for the West. He is not for us. Each rejection stung, but I could not be shaken. I had seen him. I had stood in his light. I had been sent back for this. And then, something happened. One night, after another long day of rejection, I sat beneath the shade of a tree at the edge of a village, my body aching from hunger. A boy, no older than 12, approached cautiously. "You spoke of Jesus today," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I straightened, surprised. "Yes." He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if making sure no one had followed him. "Tell me more." Hope surged inside me. I began with the truth, that Jesus was not just another teacher, not just another prophet. He was the Son of God. I told him how I had stood before him, how I had seen his love, his power, his mercy. I told him how salvation was not something we could earn, that no amount of good deeds could remove our sins, that only Jesus could. The boy listened, his dark eyes wide with wonder. "I have always felt empty," he admitted. "No matter how much I pray, no matter how much I try to be good, I never feel peace." My heart ached for him. "That is because true peace is not found in karma," I said gently. "It is found in Jesus." I did not know it then, but that boy would be the first heart to truly hear, the first seed planted, the first life changed. And though I was still alone, still wandering, still unwelcome in the world I had once called home, for the first time since returning, I smiled, because I knew this was only the beginning. The boy's eyes stayed locked onto mine, his small frame trembling with something I recognized. Hunger. Not hunger for food, but hunger for truth. For the first time, someone had truly listened. I saw it in the way he held his breath after every word, in the way his fingers clenched the hem of his tunic, in the way his soul reached out for something he had never known, but somehow recognized the moment he heard it. I had seen this hunger before, because it was once my own. "Jesus is calling you," I said gently. "You have been searching for him, even when you didn't know his name." Tears welled in his eyes. "What do I do?" he whispered. I reached out, resting a hand on his shoulder. "Believe in him. Give him your heart. Speak his name, and he will never leave you." And in that moment, I knew I had been sent back for this, not for fame, not for recognition, not for my own comfort, but for them, for the ones still trapped in the same deception I had once followed, for the seekers, the wanderers, the weary souls longing for something real, for the boy sitting before me, whispering a name that had never passed his lips before. Jesus. I had lost everything, my home, my reputation, my old life. But I had gained something eternal, and I would never stop. Even if I was rejected, even if I was alone, even if I had to walk until my feet bled, because I knew the truth, and I had to share it. If this story touched your heart, I invite you to continue this journey with us. There is another message waiting for you, a revelation that will transform your life. Just click the next video appearing on your screen now. It is glorious and meant for you. Thank you for being here. Amen.